Hi everyone, it's me, John Whaite, and I'm very excited to be back on the Waitrose channel. Now, Christmas is just around the corner, and this is my favourite time of year. I love it. I love getting cosy in the kitchen, and for me, there's nothing cozier than a pie. So I'm going to make my chicken and stuffing lattice pie. Now, the beautiful thing about this pie is how simple it is. It's a basic comforting chicken pie, but it's got a slight Christmas twist. It's got a layer of packet stuffing with some dried cranberries and then a lovely patterned lattice top. And for me, this is just Christmas on a plate. Sorry, my little dog. Abel, it's not your time. Go and get back in bed. Have a lie in. Now, of course, you can't have a pie without pastry. A pastry bottom and top. I hasten to add, I'm from Wigan, I know my pies. So I'm gonna make a really easy pastry. It's my 3-2-1 pastry method. 3 parts flour, 2 parts butter, and 1 part liquid. All in Whaite, so you can't go wrong. So on that note, let's get some weighing done. Now you can of course do this by hand and rub the butter into the flour and salt by hand, but Christmas time, it's all about indulgence. And for me, indulgence is cutting corners and making things easier. So I'm gonna use my food processor. Then what I want to do first is just grind the butter into the flour. Okay, once you've got the butter and flour pretty much blended, there can be a few little pea-sized chunks of flour that'll make it even more flaky. I'm then going to add the liquid ingredients. Now you could of course use milk, you could use water, but I like to jazz things up a little bit with creme fraiche. And this isn't just reckless indulgence, this. Because creme fraiche is slightly acidic, it helps to kind of break down the strands of gluten in the flour and makes a really flaky pastry. But if you don't want to spend the money on creme fraiche, you could use milk with a squeeze of lemon juice or vinegar. That would work exactly the same. And then what I want to do, rather than put this on non-stop, is just pulse it gently, just until I can see the texture of the pastry changing and I can whip it out and put it in the fridge. And as you can see now, what's happening is it's gone from a kind of sandy, dusty consistency to little pebbly lumps, and that is exactly what I'm looking for. So as soon as it hits that stage, I'm going to take it out and just bring it together by hand. And if you fancy having a dabble at making this pastry, the full recipe is in the link in the video description. So I'm going to tip all of that out, and then with your hands, just bring all the pieces together. Give it 1 or 2 little Needham folds. So I'm going to wrap that up, put it in the fridge and let it rest. Ideally, a good 8 hours overnight, but an hour, if that's what you've got, will do. Now this filling has got very few special ingredients in there, so the trickery is all about the cooking, how to get the best out of every ingredient that goes into the pot. So I'm going to start with my vegetables, get them prepped, and then I can just go on a roller coaster of cookery joy after that. So first of all, onion, now the leek, and all the leftovers, of course. You can either compost them or do what I do and freeze the onion skins and roots of any other veg, and when you come to make a stock, you've got a big bag of stock veg offcuts, and it makes the best flavoursome stock in the world. And then celery. And if you look in the fridge and lurking there is a little carrot, or perhaps even a parsnip, feel free to finely dice those and pop them in too. This time of year there's a couple of leftovers, and it's important that we try and use them up, isn't it? So here I'm using the Essential Range chicken thighs, and chicken thighs are so much more flavourful. And all of Waitrose chicken is higher welfare, and there's more information all about that on the Waitrose website. What I'm going to do is fry these in batches. And you might think to yourself, oh, why is he not just throwing it all in the pan in one go? Because the answer to that, my friend, is if you just chuck all the chicken in, it won't colour, it'll just braise and go all tough and horrible. So please do it in batches, be patient, so trust me on this one. Right, before I crack on with the veg, I want to take all that liquid gold off the bottom of the pan and put it in my chicken, because that is flavour. So rather than just chucking it out or wiping the pan, I deglaze the pan, which is just a posh way of saying add a bit of liquid to a dry pan, and it takes all the flavour off the bottom. So I use a bit of white wine for this. If you've got some vodka or a bit of brandy or something like that, just use a couple of tablespoons of that, that would work too. And all I'm going to do is just scrape the bottom of the pan as that wine comes to a bubble. Once I'm happy, I've got every little bit of chicken juice and meat, I can then pour that wine, that lovely golden liquor, in the bowl with the chicken. So I've got a glug more oil in the pan. I'm going to add all of that veg. Cookery is about reduction and concentration, and even in cooking down, sweating down a few leeks and onions, you're concentrating the flavour. It's going to take a good 15 minutes this. And what I'm going to do now is just add some flour, because that's going to help to thicken the sauce when I make it. It doesn't need to cook or anything like that, just mix it into the veg. Try and get rid of any bigger lumps of flour at this stage, and then in with this stock. And then I'm going to add to that all that chicken and that gorgeous, flavourful, winey liquor. I love the pop of a pea in a chicken pie. Right, I'm going to let that cook for about 40 minutes until the liquor is really, really flavourful and the chicken's cooked through. And I'll just pop a lid partially on it, and that'll stop any splashes in the kitchen. Right, this has had its 40 minutes and it looks so good and it smells incredible. All I need to do to finish that now is just add a good glug of creme fraiche, which will help to enrich the sauce, thicken it a little bit. And then a handful or so of parsley that I've just roughly chopped. And that is the sauce done. So I'm going to let that cool down completely so it doesn't melt my pastry. And once it's cooled, I can assemble the pie. Okay, my chicken pie mixture is cooled and chilled. My pastry is ready. What I've done with the pastry is just separated it into two balls, one of 1/3 and one of 2/3. This will be for the top and this is for the bottom. I'm going to roll the pastry out now into hopefully a disc. I want to make sure I've got a little bit of excess pastry overhanging the dish so I can do a bit of festive crimpage later on and plonk it in the dish. It's as simple as that. And that way I can see if I've got enough pastry. So I'm going to just pick the sides of the pastry up and just tuck them down to make sure that it's completely in the corners of the pie dish. And then I'll grab a fork and just dock the base of the pastry. This is one of the most satisfying things, I think, in the culinary world. Now, I'm going to take my cooled chicken pie filling and just pile that into the pie dish like this. So I've got here some packet stuffing which I've just rehydrated with water, and I've tossed a few dried cranberries in there just for added flair and Christmassy zing. And then what I'm going to do is just portion the stuffing on top of the pie as best I can. Now, if you don't want to do the lattice, you could just throw some pastry on top and whack it in your oven. But it's Christmas, a bit of effort is required and appreciated at this time of year, so I'm going to make a lattice top, or at least attempt to. So just fold the surplus pastry over the edge of the pie dish. What I'm going to do is just make a little bit of edible glue in the form of an egg yolk which I've beaten. And then I'll take the prettiest piece of pastry and put that on top in the middle. And then I'll take a second piece of pastry, put that on top, and I'm going to lift the first piece of pastry up just to slide another piece underneath. Repeat that on the other side of the same first piece of pastry. It sounds complicated, but it's commonsensical. Whenever I make a pie like this, it always reminds me of being a little boy. Partially because I grew up in Wigan and there's plenty of pie shops in Wigan, let me tell you, but mostly because Mum would always make a pie, whether it was a bonfire night or Christmas or a Sunday lunch, there'd always be a pie involved. So I can't help make a pie without thinking of my lovely Mum. Okay, so roll the pastry up, and then once I've got that crust, I'm going to do some crimping. If this is a stretch for you though, just use a fork and stick that pastry down. Lovely, this is ready for the oven apart from the all-important glaze. And to glaze it, I find an egg yolk works best. And a pie like this, I find, is one of them things that you can make in advance and keep it in the fridge for a good 3 days before you eat it, or you can freeze it for up to 3 months. Right, that is glazed within an inch of its life. It's latticed and crimped. So I just need to bake it now, about 35-40 minutes, until it's golden brown and piping hot. And then I will be eating this with a smile on my face. So there you have it, a chicken and stuffing lattice pie. You can see that the pastry is so golden and flaky. It smells incredible. That layer of stuffing is going to be so tender and beautiful, and that chicken is going to be full of flavour because of the way we cooked it. So I'm going to go and take this to my grandma's house, sit down in front of the telly and enjoy it with her. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I'm hoping that I'll see you very, very soon. Oh, and Merry Christmas.